Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July 6th regular meeting of Council. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. We also have Councillor Brown attending electronically. Tonight's regular meeting of Council is being held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. So if during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the question period sign-up sheet, which is on the table. The double doors to my left. Please note that the Council Procedure Bylaw states that questions will only be taken on staff reports, consent items, or other business items. Before we start the meeting, however, I would like to take a few moments to remind those who are attending in person about the rules of decorum for all Council and committee meetings. The meeting of Council is intended to be a place where democracy can freely take place in a respectful and safe manner. The Council chambers is a workplace, and there are considerations Council and staff must make to ensure that a safe work environment exists in accordance with WorkSafe BC regulations. To support this, and in accordance with Council's procedure bylaw, disrespectful conduct will not be tolerated, so we ask that there be no cheering or jeering or other disruptions from the gallery. Furthermore, the use of electronic devices for recording or photographing is prohibited unless otherwise authorized through the media accreditation or by the chair. This will ensure that anyone speaking, whether it be a delegation, member of Council, or staff, is not interrupted and can make their point freely without distraction, fear of ridicule, or intimidation. That said, there may be moments during certain presentations or recognitions where clapping or expressions of appreciation are welcome. There are none on the agenda tonight. In instances where a speaker is being inappropriate or has exceeded their time limit, their microphone will be cut off. Similarly, if there are disruptions by any person in the gallery, they will be asked to stop, and if they do not comply, they may be asked to leave, as permitted under Section 133 of the Community Charter. If necessary, Council may call a recess in order to reset the environment of the Council chambers. It is our belief that if everyone is respectful of these basic considerations, this meeting and future meetings will be more effective in furthering the business of the City of Nanaimo. And the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items, Ms. Gurry, and there are three.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Council. For late items this evening, we have the addition of Agenda Item 15C, Royal Canadian Legion Mount Benson Branch 256, request for letter of support regarding Legion National Cribbage Championship 2028. We have the addition of Agenda Item 16B, Councillor Eastmere notice of motion regarding rezoning for data centers, as well, Your Worship, for report 12C, Climate Hazard Assessment and Mapping Project. We're going to move that ahead to be the new 12A and then reorder the remaining reports in accordance with that. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Motion for adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Eastmere. All those in favour? Any opposed? None. Mayor's report. I just have one item tonight before I turn it over to one of our councillors. And that is what has become obvious to some folks who've had a chance to read news reports that starting at the end of June, and it will continue till October, the City of Nanaimo will be commencing the upgrade of the Rotary Bowl track and field facility. The improvements will meet the growing demands of the community and give the city the ability to host higher level track and field competitions. The project will include a new high jump area, a new pole vault track, a sprint extension to the oval, new sod and irrigation system in the infield area. The capital project continues the city investment in local sports infrastructure, which encourages residents to be active and healthy, and it will allow Nanaimo to further promote itself as a destination for high-level sporting events. The budget for these improvements is $1.4 million, with $300,000 being funded through the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Community Works Fund. For safety, the site will be partially closed during construction. This includes the entire infield and most of the track. Creating and improving Nanaimo's amenities aligns with our growing and current services and is one of the key focuses of Council's strategic framework. I'm now going to ask Councillor Armstrong, who attended the Federation of Municipalities, to provide a brief report. Please, Councillor Armstrong.
Wasn't aware of that, but okay.
That's not what my notes say, Councillor, but that's all right.
Need the mic. No, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I attended the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in Edmonton and tried to go to things which I thought would benefit the community. One of the interesting things I went to was on the process to put First Nations what's called non-reserve land back into reserves. That was very interesting, as we know that we're seeing that with the, I call them the Fifth Street properties, are going to the First Nations, so I learned what the municipalities have to do, et cetera. Another big thing was on getting housing built and what the difficulties were, and without everybody, it was the cost of infrastructure to put in like sewers, water, et cetera, where we're being forced by provincial governments to build, but no dollars, so it's falling back on taxpayers to build all these new sewers, new lines, new pipes, et cetera, more police officers, so that was a big issue. One interesting thing that came out of Edmonton was that they had a lot of surplus school sites, so they sold them for $1 to construction companies, but they had to have 30% of their units be non-profit, and they actually have 900 units now, with 300 of them being non-market, so that was a very successful thing. The other thing that came out of that was because a lot of places are going to the eight or six units that used to be single family, was the fact that most communities were not doing community engagement properly to show people why it's being done, et cetera, so that was good. Then I went on a tour of Spruce Grove, which is a new smaller sub-community outside of Edmonton, and one of the tours we went on, they have a new sports complex, and in the sports complex, they put a new library, an art gallery, a theater, and the parking during the daytime is for those commuting into Edmonton, so they didn't need extra parking lots, because of course during the day, most of the parking lots sit empty, so that was great. But what they found was that people during breaks of sporting events would go to the gallery, so the gallery got more exposure. Parents that were taking their kids to hockey during the day or ice skating had another place for their kids to go. They would go to the library, do homework, et cetera. So it was a good way to use municipal resources. Instead of putting them all over town, it was a nice central area. So that was an interesting thing. Then I went to Mr. George Cuff, who's been here before, and that was to bring back governance into municipal politics, and that was interesting. The mayor of Moncton, who was the first female mayor there, spoke about the difficulties she had and all the hate, and how do you deal with it, and how do we work around getting those issues, and how do we engage so that people go back to respectful dialogue. I'm trying to think what else I went to. Oh, and then I went to an accessibility meetings, and then I had meetings with nonprofits out of Ontario who were interested in what Nanaimo was doing, so I met with them and talked about what we were doing and how we were trying to process it. The other thing I learned when I went to the building infrastructure was that actually Nanaimo's ahead of the curve on most builds, because we've been having basement suites here for years, when other places are now just allowing them. We've got lane suites, we've got all that stuff, so doing a good thing. A lot of places, same issues that we have, getting permits out in a timely manner. So I spoke to 2 communities that have done a lot of work around that, and have given their information to our CAO and our director of, what do you call it? Development. So yeah. So anyhow, it was very interesting in the networking and hearing, and everybody was saying it's just the cost of everything now is doubled and tripled. And the provincial downloads also came up from every province, that the provincial downloads are really hurting municipalities because we're having to increase our tax base. We don't have an increase in tax base, and we're increasing taxes significantly just to pay for concrete that used to be, has gone up, what, 40%, and steel, which has gone up 50 to 60%. So it was a big issue, and Ottawa heard and listened and said they'd be coming out with some policies on how they can help communities build infrastructure. So yeah, it was good. It was very interesting. I could go on, but I know you guys have got other stuff you'd like to hear, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armstrong. We have nothing to rise and report on. We do have presentations tonight, though, and I'm pleased to welcome for Public Art and Traffic Signals, Jamie Brett Sine, Recreation Coordinator, Cultural Services, and Lauren Bailey, Traffic Signal Technician. Good evening and welcome to both of you.
It is on? Okay, go. Sorry. Thank you for having us this evening. As you said, I'm Jamie Brett Sine. I am the culture coordinator with the city, and I'm here with
Lauren Bailey, the traffic signal technician for the city.
Are we switching slides? We'll get it eventually here. So as Mayor and Council would know, but I think a lot of people in the audience or watching online wouldn't know, is that the Urban Design Roster was a program that was launched in 2021. And this is when we have a roster of artists that are engaged to do a variety of different city projects. So we have a lot of showcasing of our local talent on this roster. We actually have 28 artists on our current urban design roster, different artists and designers that we engage in a number of projects. And those projects are based on ongoing demand and opportunity as well. So some examples of that, you can see this design by Noel Brown, which is on one of our ice resurfacers. We have, of course, our utility covers by Aileelam. This piece, Fluence, by David Martinello, which is at Westwood Lake. Of course, different murals around the communities, such as this one in Lower Bowen. And of course, we have our Pride mural downtown as well. Things like our PRC stickers, these two designed by a couple different artists, or a unique project like Sensing Nanaimo by Amy Pye, which are the projections along Commercial Street. Of course, utility wraps and covers like this one, again by Noel Brown, which is on our ticket kiosk up at Stadium District.
So Traffic Signals first partnered with the Urban Design Roster back in 2021, the first year of the Urban Design Roster. Our first design was actually by Sebastian, the one that you see on the left here. It was taken from existing works that Sebastian was doing with the city with hydro kiosks and transformed into something that could be added to the traffic signal wrap. The one on the right side is work that we've had done by him later on down at 10th Street and Lawler. Traffic Signals has since gone on to become one of the most prolific users of the Urban Design Roster outside of arts and culture itself. The design on the design on the left by Amy Pye was our first intentionally created wrap for the traffic signal cabinets. It's displayed on Bowen Road in between Quarterway School and Forest Grove. The one on the right is one of her most recent designs that is displayed at 3rd Street and Howard. During the 6 years that Traffic Signals has been partnered with the Urban Design Roster, we have had the chance to work with 13 unique artists, creating 23 unique designs, which are showcased across 32 of our signals throughout the city. Morrow is one of the most prolific designers, with 3 of his wraps designs being showcased along the Midtown Gateway project that was just complete. Those 32 intersections count for almost 60% of all of the traffic signals within the city of Nanaimo. These are 2 wraps done by Sandy and Steve Pell from Helvetica. They are showcased along Mostar Road and also along the 2 signals recently redone on Hammond Bay. Before the end of 2026, we'll have at least 3 more locations that will have wraps by artists on the Urban Design Roster. This one by Jillian was recently done at Rutherford and Wills when we upgraded the full traffic signal there. And we're not done. We're already looking ahead to 2027, where we've started to engage with 2 new artists who have not had art done on the roster. So what does this look like? The yellow stars here represent the first installation or the unique design of the wraps. The red stars are where we've reused some of those unique wraps. The 3 blue locations are the 3 locations to be done before the end of this year. And then I also want to highlight that we do have locations where, rather than having Urban Design Roster, we've used historic photographs native to that area from the museum.
So something Lauren and I talk about a lot is curating site-specific work. And what I mean by that is instead of just taking a cool artwork and plunking it down wherever we happen to have a kiosk, we give a lot of thought to how that artwork can reflect community. So of course our main goal is to make that artwork, public artwork, visible and accessible throughout the city. But what's really special is that public art is a really, really powerful placemaking tool. So when you develop art with consideration for community, a particular environment, a particular place, you have an opportunity to build a bridge between people and place. And that is when you are going to foster a sense of belonging and community pride. And that is what we see that leads to the health and happiness of communities. So Lauren and I both recognize that these traffic control cabinets are very visible throughout the city, so they provide a really perfect canvas for this. The example you're seeing there is actually going to be a TELUS kiosk, so they are responsible for it, but they engaged with me for the artwork to wrap that kiosk. It's in the Lindley Valley area, and we have an artist who actually lives in that area and created a painting specifically of Lindley Valley for the kiosk. Of course, Patrick Belanger, you'll see his work throughout the community, and each of them given very particular thought to the places they've gone into. The ones on the left are our first responders kiosks, and the middle and right side, you're seeing the kiosks that are near VIU, as well as the recreation center, and reflect a lot of that community as well. Of course, we do work closely with Snuneymuxw. We have a number of Snuneymuxw artists on the roster. This particular wrap is done by the late Joel Good. And we, of course, engage with Snuneymuxw when it comes to working with those artists and also approvals on those designs. And I also think a lot about, and Lauren and I discuss where those kiosks are going, but also different artist styles. So looking at the style or the aesthetic of a particular artist and how that will best suit a particular project. This one you're seeing here is by Anais Lira, and this is reflecting a very aquatic scene, and it relates to the proximity of that kiosk to the ocean.
So besides the obvious benefit to the city of supporting local artists, where's the benefit to the traffic signals? Well, for us, it's in the reduction of graffiti. These designs by Emily, the one on the left, she was given the cue of active mobility, which was completed during our Mostar upgrade, and then the one on the right is found at 5th and Bruce. When the cabinets aren't wrapped, they're just a large gray canvas. Both of these locations are found down on Front Street. When they were installed, we did not have wraps in place. The first cabinet was tagged within 48 hours. And during the 3 months before they were wrapped, I was there multiple times to clean off graffiti. When the cabinet does get tagged, sometimes it's without the wrap, sometimes we can clean it off, other times we just have to paint over it. With the fact we are using a graffiti-resistant 3M wrap, it makes cleanup so much easier. And should the design have to be replaced, we already have it on file, so it's simply a matter of working with the contractor to go out and complete the replacement panel. We don't have to have something completely redesigned. Well, we have worked with Jeff King to paint the cabinets in the past. Unfortunately, when you do try to remove the graffiti from a painted cabinet, it just doesn't hold up.
So along the same line, what we know is that when a space looks intentionally cared for, people behave differently around it. And what I find really interesting is that public art in urban environments has been proven to reduce crime. So one of the largest art programs in the world, or largest studies in the world, came out of the Philadelphia Arts Program, and that actually showed crime reductions up to 42%. Surrounding new public art. That study was done in 2025, and that included from vandalism and tagging to violent offenses. So we know it makes a significant difference. Now, another really special thing has been the public feedback and reception to these artworks within the communities. And we've had really, really positive reception to seeing this art throughout community. What you're seeing there, obviously on the screen, it looks very little, but those are a couple of Facebook posts with some positive feedback on the artwork. And what's really special is seeing the way in which this artwork is linking to those feelings of pride and really those feelings of inclusion and belonging within community. And I do think that that is a credit to Lauren and my thought that has gone into just being a reflection of diversity, that artwork should be a reflection of diversity and certainly amplify those local stories too. So it has meanings to the communities that are looking to the artwork, and it is reflecting their personal stories as well. And in that way, reinforcing and reimagining our shared cultural identity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Don't run away just yet. Thank you. It's good to be popular, you know. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you.
Then
Yes.
Councillor
What's
Thorpe,
the
and then-
cost for each one of these? Because I know we'll be asked that.
The cost for each wrap, it's split down by cabinet. At the end of the day, it is about $2,700.
And that's including the cost for the artist?
So transportation covers the cost of the wrap, and then culture covers the cost that is the artist fee, which is usually, depending on the size, $1,500.
So about $4,200 per, roughly.
Yes, but through that $1,500, we do have the agreement where we can use the wrap up to 3 times for that $1,500 cost.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe and Councillor Perino.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you, if I may, Councillor Armstrong asked one of the questions I was interested in, which is the reality of the cost. So that's very interesting. I like the program. I'm curious about the life expectancy of a wrap. Is there a plan for regular replacement, or if not, how long do we expect them to last?
Well, the first wrap that we did have installed was in 2021. At this point, there has been very little damage to it, so we are expecting at least 10 years, if not longer, for these. When there is vandalism damage, obviously we do have to do some maintenance on those to replace it. Unfortunately, like we saw with the first responders kiosk, we had damage almost immediately there. We've been putting off doing replacement, but we've also come to the point where we realize that it's now going to be a benefit to replace it rather than just leave it damaged.
Right, thank you very much. And if I may, Your Worship, one other comment or question. I really appreciated the idea of trying to relate the wrap to a particular area of the city and make it significant. Has there been any thought given to using maybe part of one side of the box for some text to reflect or explain a historical significance of a neighborhood or area?
Yes, it's nothing we've done just yet because part of that I've given some thought to is accessibility when it comes to how that text may look on the shape of these kiosks. The traffic cabinets that Lauren and I work on are a little not necessarily ideal, or you have to go much smaller with the text. It is something I discussed. I've also discussed with artists the incorporation of perhaps poetry and some overlap with the Poet Laureate program. So yes, it has been a conversation. We're constantly sort of reinventing and looking at ways to make it even more significant to history of the areas. At the moment, I'd say the best reflection of the history of a particular area is in fact the historical wraps that are in some spaces as well, which are usually photographs of those areas, but historical photographs.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I want to say, my questions were actually asked, but they look beautiful. They look beautiful wherever they are, and whoever the artist is, they look fantastic. So I really appreciate them. You did say that you're allowed to use the wrap 3 times. What did you mean by that?
So with the agreement with the artist, part of that agreement is that the $1,500 commission isn't to use it at a single location, that we can reuse their design up to 3 locations.
Okay.
So on some of the wraps, we have reused them 3 times, such as the one by Emily and Amy Pye. Other ones we've used twice, and then we do have some that are unique and have only been used once at this time.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Like the shirt.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Committee minutes are just for receipt. We have no consent items. We're on to delegations unrelated to agenda items. The first is a delegation from Anna McKenzie, re Departure Bay Beach Safety and Noise Concern. Ms. McKenzie, good evening. When you get to the mic, if you can introduce yourself, you'll have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when there's a minute left. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good evening, respected council members, and to our chair. My name is Anna McKenzie. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a member of the Opaskwayak Cree Nation in Treaty 5 territory. And I am a very grateful guest on the unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. I've lived and raised children in the city of Nanaimo for 8 years, and I am the proud mother to 3 children who are all members of the Snuneymuxw First Nation belonging to the Simpson family. I am here today to bring forward concern with the traffic safety and noise pollution at Departure Bay Beach and along Departure Bay Road on behalf of my children and my mother, who is a resident of Departure Bay. To begin, Departure Bay Beach was once a winter village where Snuneymuxw families gathered. Today, it is a vibrant beach where families and children enjoy the waters and playground area. What is a family destination quickly becomes a nightmare with the incessant threat of speeding vehicles and the unacceptable noise levels in the evening and into the early hours of the morning. These concerns have been brought forward many other times, so I'm surely not alone, including from neighborhood associations and other schools around the area, namely Solaire Elementary and Rock City Elementary. However, a recent sleepover at my mom's with my little girl left me shocked, and there is no power more potent than a parent getting their child to sleep on a school night. With my background in policy, writing, governance, and journalism, I, along with many other concerned citizens, have regathered here once again to raise the alarm. Someone is going to get hurt. My mother is a 65-year-old dedicated employee at Vancouver Island Health Authority who lives in Departure Bay. She has long shared with me that the noise of drag racing cars disrupts her sleep well past the hour of 11 p.m. Many neighbors have expressed concern, have petitioned to have oversight and enforcement over the safety and well-being of residents and guests in Departure Bay. Consistent calls are made to the RCMP with very little to no enforcement, and some of my neighbors have actually moved or sold their units or given notice solely due to the noise of drag racing cars and parties past 11. The noise is secondary to the concern of the speeding and drag racing vehicles, and I can't emphasize this enough as a mother. My small children, I am concerned for their safety, not only because it's an ancestral place for them as Snuneymuxw children, but for all members of the public who go to a place with such a rich history. The vibes, so to speak, should be that of family, community, and respect, and not a place to race cars and rev engines. I will not allow my 13-year-old to take my 2 younger to Departure Bay Playground because I have simply witnessed too many close calls and reckless drivers. And last week, as many of us know, 2 teenagers were hit at a marked crossing by the driver of a Mustang who was issued the lowest level grade ticket. I am here today with 200 signatures and 100 testimonials on ipetitions.org. My request is for this council to champion the concerns of Departure Bay residents by addressing the speed and noise along Departure Bay Road, which extends between 2 elementary schools, Solaire Elementary down into the bay and up towards Rock City. This could and should include larger, more visible signage and traffic calming speed deterrents, a change speed from 40 kilometers an hour to 30 kilometers an hour. It's currently only suggested.
1 minute.
Thank you. I had my daughter time me, so I've got it on point. Increased presence and enforcement from RCMP. Clear signage reminding beachgoers of the city's noise bylaw with clear direction on the outcomes of violating this bylaw with a focus on drag racing vehicles. I understand that Departure Bay Road is a main artery for emergency vehicles and bus transportation. However, there are many other main arteries within the city that have speed bumps to protect the safety of pedestrians. As the neighborhood develops, and for the physical and mental safety of Nanaimo residents and residents of Departure Bay, action is required by the city. On a personal note, coming from our neighbors is a part, speaking on behalf of our neighbors is a part of our collective and original instructions, and these are my teachings as a Cree woman. Please take steps in alignment with these principles. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to the committee's response, and I am available for any comments and questions. Hi.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, through you, just a quick question to the delegation. Thank you very much for coming. You're probably aware, but council meets once or twice a year with neighborhood associations to hear their concerns and priorities, and that's a very useful dialogue. Have you been in touch with your neighborhood association?
I have, and have the support of the Departure Bay Neighborhood Association in support of this particular petition.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, then Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you. I just wondered if you were aware that we did do some experiments with dropping the speed limits, and when we did, the speeds actually went up by 7 kilometers, not down, up, so that was a concern. But the problem we have there, it's not just your area. I live up off of Hammond Bay, and they're speeding there every day. Songbird, they're in the malls, drag racing constantly. It's all over, and the police have very limited resources. So it's going to be a tough one, but I'm sure we're going to try and help solve it. And before we put any speed bumps and something, we do go through emergency services because they can really hinder the response. So just wanted to say that because it is a main road. Thank you.
Thank you. And the commentary goes beyond just the petition. It blew up on social media, so it does extend up and beyond towards Hammond Bay Road, and there seems to be maybe an inner city cycle of drag racing cars that are disrupting lots of residents just outside of the Departure Bay catchment that I'm speaking to today.
And I would tell you that I have had conversations with Inspector Tate about that, about the concerns from our Public Safety Committee. We just met last week on those concerns, and they're well aware of that. And they're hoping to get, the problem is they're so short-staffed right now because of FIFA that there's no extra bodies. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Gesselbrock, it's questions for the delegation. I would remind council.
Thanks. Are we able to ask questions to staff?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you for the presentation. And
Are there any further questions for the delegation? Thank you very much. Please be
Thank you
seated.
so much for your time and
Thank you.
consideration.
thanks for collecting
Gesselbrock,
the
question for staff?
petition. Question to staff. What is the current, I know we've looked at the Departure Bay traffic calming for numerous years and have tried different interventions and, Mr. Rose, and I'm just curious, what's the current status right now on that stretch? Are we still actively observing what we've done so far? Have we pulled back and are not currently addressing anything on that route? And I know with densifying area, it is an area of ongoing concern, so just an update on where we're at currently with the area.
Mr. Rose, please.
Certainly, through your worship. So, as has been discussed, we've had a lot of conversations about traffic calming around Departure Bay, and we've tried a couple of different tactics to try and kind of manage things, some with greater degrees of success than others. For the last few years, we've really been in a monitoring situation, and from our perspective, it hasn't been one of our locations that has generated the most attention in that time period. Obviously, something has taken place to change that and rekindle the issue. And so we'll need to go back out and update our data to understand if there has been a change or if there's something else going on.
Great, and just one more. Had we previously tried to lower the speed limit to 30 and then change that back to 40?
So for quite a long period of time, it was an advisory 30 kilometers per hour speed. And so that meant that it encouraged people to travel at 30, but it was questionable whether they ever did. And so we changed it to a regulatory 40 during summer months. And we didn't get great results with that. And so we have maintained that. We did also try installing some traffic calming features along the road, but the devices we used became more problematic than any benefit they added. And so it's, as you say, it's kind of been in a monitoring state for the last few years.
And then the devices that were problematic, was that feedback from the community, or were there other implications? Like, I can't remember what they were, if it was narrowing or?
Yeah, so we used, we refer to them as Calgary curbs. They're 8 foot by 4 foot concrete dividers, basically, and we sort of arranged them in the road to create a narrowing effect. But we were actually finding that people were pushing them to the side, and it became a real operational problem for us. So we felt that it was just a better option to remove them outright and continue with the seasonal speed limit reduction.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think further look will be worthwhile.
Thank you. Councillor Perino?
Thank you, Your Worship, and just a quick question to Mr. Rose. So the option of having a raised pedestrian sidewalk, and when I talk raised, I'm not talking about the sharp raise, but the you know, the lower one that we see particularly on Front Street, that kind of thing. Is that an option that we can consider?
I don't believe it's something we've discussed previously, but that is a response route for emergency. And so
We're trying to minimize, is that the idea?
it's not our first choice. And so I think there's a number of other things that we would, well,
Prefer to do?
there's other things we prefer to do. I'm not entirely sure what we can do that's not quite significant. And so going through our standard traffic calming process, also being that this is a major road, we would want to do a fairly thorough engagement with the community to understand both locally and regionally what the changes we're proposing will do.
Okay, and I can't remember whether or not this was on the list from the Neighborhood Association. I can't remember if this particular one was part of their list of concerns.
There were some references to pedestrian crossings, but I believe they were focused on Lote Street, but I don't know for certain.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Rose. The next delegation is Lois Powell, re bike lanes and transportation concerns. Ms. Powell, good evening. Good evening. Introduce yourself for the record. You'll have 5 minutes. When there's a minute left, I'll let you know. Thank you.
Lois Powell, do you have to know where I live? No. In May of 2014, the city of Nanaimo completed its first long-term multimodal transportation master plan. The NTMP will guide the transportation decision-making over the next 25 years and recommend improvements for all makes of transportation, including walking, cycling, public transport, goods movement, and vehicles. Shift their transportation system from predominant car-oriented system to a multi-modal system accommodating all modes of transportation. Daily bicycle trips would go from 1% to 4% by 2041. The target is 15,000 cycling trips per day, an increase from 3,000 daily cycling trips seen currently in Nanaimo. Remember, this is in 2014. 2014 to 2026, any year, in any one of those years, can the city provide data showing how many residents commute to and from work by bicycle compared with the broader population that relies on cars or public transit and walking. People of all ages can access public transit and use the same road network that serves cars. Given this, what evidence support the need for additional dedicated bicycle lanes that require significant changes to existing streets and infrastructure? How many of the approximate 1,000 employed by the city ride a bike to work? How many of NRGH employees, approximately 3,200, ride a bike to work? Can you imagine doing a 12-hour shift, getting on your bike to ride home? There is one that does. Bike lanes, sidewalks, and green spaces that start nowhere and end nowhere are not a transportation plan. They're a waste of taxpayer money. Here are the 4 I've seen. Shenton Road, it's quite beautiful in front of the dental building. It almost needs a park bench. There's trees, a grass space, sidewalk. Corner of Departure Bay in Argyle. Starts nowhere on Departure Bay, goes around the corner, ends nowhere on Argyle. East Wellington, well, that's just ridiculous. But then Hammond Bay, apparently there's another one, I haven't seen it, out there, just starts nowhere and ends nowhere. These aren't even a block long. How many more does the city have planned? Is it to do with development? If somebody's going to develop a lot, you got to do these green spaces, sidewalk, and bike lane? They do look quite nice when they're done. More problems is Boxwood Road, an industrial corridor where large commercial trucks must frequently maneuver back and forth to access the businesses. Recent road changes have reduced efficiency and created significant traffic congestion. The city focuses on cycling infrastructure should not come at an expense of efficient movement of commercial traffic, workers, and local businesses. Stuck behind, I felt bad for the trucker. This is only once or twice. The cars were backed up, you know where Boxwood is, into the traffic circle. We were there, well, it seemed a lot longer.
1 minute, Ms. Powell.
Probably wasn't 5 minutes. This council appears to believe that every safety issue can be solved with concrete barriers, road redesigns, giving far less attention to education, awareness, and personal responsibility among all road users. Don't just, if you're a pedestrian, don't just walk onto the crosswalk because it's there. For heaven's sakes, have a look around. With elections coming in October, can a new council put an end to this insanity and focus on projects that actually connect people and serve the whole community? You probably don't have any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Powell. Doesn't look like I do have questions, but appreciate your attendance as always.
That's it?
That's it.
You guys are on board.
The next delegation is Tamara Brown, Rock City Wetland Development. Ms. Brown, you know the drill. If you 5 minutes, introduce yourself for the record. I'll let you know when there's a minute left, please.
Tamara Brown. Thank you for having me here tonight.
I was going to say, speak into the mic so we can hear you.
Oh, yes, this mic. And the green button to forward the slides. Yes? I'm a resident of Nanaimo and a mother who cares deeply about my community and environment. I'm here today in my personal capacity. The project at 3400 Barrington Road is a proposed 6-story, 102-unit apartment building immediately beside the Rock City wetland. Construction would remove approximately 437 trees and involve extensive bedrock blasting beside what is now believed to be an exceptionally rare peatland ecosystem. Since the development permit was approved in January 2026, important new ecological information has emerged, and questions remain about whether the applicable provincial framework was identified and applied before the project was approved. I'm here because I believe this new information warrants pausing any further disturbance of the site until it has been independently reviewed. Since approval, the province has indicated the wetland likely contains a rare, potentially red-listed fen ecosystem. New information has also emerged regarding hydrological connectivity, riparian protection, species of conservation concern, and downstream fish habitat. Several independent reviews are now underway. One of my concerns relates to the riparian areas protection regulation, or RAPR. RAPR applies when development is proposed near streams providing fish habitat. The environmental assessment identifies hydrologically connected wetland features leading to fish habitat, Cottle Creek watershed. The environmental assessment and the city's own mapping identify a hydrologically connected system leading towards fish habitat. That raised one question for me. Where in the public record was it determined whether the smaller wetland and its seasonal creeks met the provincial definition of a stream under RAPR? If that exists, where can council and the public find it? A fen takes a millennia to form. Removing 437 trees and blasting bedrock beside this wetland could permanently alter its hydrology. Those changes cannot simply be undone. I should be snuggling my 4-year-old and nursing my 17-month-old to sleep right now. But instead, I find myself here with you fine folks advocating for a place that could be celebrated as an ecological crown jewel of Nanaimo. I respectfully ask council for 2 things. Apply the precautionary principle and pause further work while this new information is independently reviewed. Second, explain why the smaller hydrologically connected wetland and its seasonal creeks were not assessed under RAPR, and what the city intends to do in light of the new significant information that has emerged since of approval. Thank you for your consideration this evening.
Thank you very much. Please. Councilor Bruno, do you have a question for the delegation?
No, not for the delegation, Your Worship. However, thank you so much for the presentation, but I have a question for staff.
Councilor Eastmere.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Can you explain what has changed specifically since a previous council originally approved the rezoning for 3400 Barrington Road?
Certainly. It's a lot to fit into 5 minutes, and I have a lot to say on the topic. Since January 2026, I've learned 4 important things about this site. Firstly, the province of BC's Conservation Data Centre conducted a site assessment and concluded the wetland is likely a poor fen, a peat-forming ecosystem that may represent an exceptionally rare ecosystem within the coastal Douglas fir zone. That information was not available when the development permit was approved. Second, I've learned much more about the ecological importance of the site. The Toth report identifies the smaller wetland as an amphibian breeding pond and rates northern red-legged frog, Rana aurora, habitat as high. 1 second. Since approval, residents have also documented species of conservation concern, including the northern red-legged frogs and olive-sided flycatchers. The provincial Develop with Care guidance recognizes that pond breeding amphibians depend on surrounding terrestrial habitat, not just the pond itself. It recommends at least a 30-meter buffer around breeding ponds and up to 60 meters for species of conservation concern, such as the northern red-legged frog. Third, I've learned more about the site's hydrology. The environmental assessment acknowledges the smaller wetland drains into the larger wetland, which forms part of the headwaters of Cottle Creek watershed. Since approval, additional resident observations, LiDAR analysis, and city GIS information have further clarified hydrological connectivity. After reviewing the provincial framework, I questioned whether the smaller hydrological hydrologically connected wetland, and its seasonal drainage features were assessed under wrapper. I have not been able to locate that analysis in the public record. Finally, after reviewing the city's responses to my questions, I realized many of the concerns about groundwater, amphibian habitat, and riparian protection were answered by referring back to the same environmental assessment that is now the subject of an independent professional complaint. That reinforced my view that an independent review is appropriate before irreversible work proceeds. I acknowledge the city requires setbacks, a covenant, engineering standards, and leaf strips. My concern is whether those protections remain sufficient in light of the new information that has emerged since approval. Taken together, that's why I'm here tonight. I'm asking council to apply the precautionary principle.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmer had a question for you. What's changed since the report was made? It's not an opportunity for you to repeat what you'd said earlier, but it's appreciated. Councillor Eastmer, another question?
That was a really comprehensive picture of what's changed since the original zoning was approved, so I appreciate that. I think I have some follow-up questions for staff.
We'll go through the questions to the delegation first and then to staff, if that's all right. Councillor Gesselbrock?
Thanks. You brought up the wrapper a few times, and then also just that answer to Councillor Eastmer, and I'm just curious, like, what specifically are you concerned about in the application of wrapper or not, sort of in that secondary?
Absolutely. So just so everyone here understands, the Riparian Areas Protection Regulation, or what we call wrapper, is a provincial law that protects streams, wetlands, and fish habitat when development is proposed nearby. If it applies, a qualified environmental professional determines how much of that habitat needs to be protected. The province creates the framework, but the municipalities are responsible for implementing it when they review development applications. The environmental assessment says the smaller wetland drains into the larger wetland, which forms the Cottle Creek, part of the Cottle Creek watershed, and connects to downstream fish habitat. That raised a straightforward question for me. Did the city follow the provincial process for determining whether the smaller wetland and its seasonal creeks should be assessed under wrapper? Again, like I said before, from the records I reviewed, the city appears to rely on the water bodies that are already shown on its mapping. The province protects water based on what it is, not whether it's already drawn on a municipal map. It looks at the actual characteristics of the water body and whether it's connected to fish habitat. My concern is that I haven't been able to identify a city process for evaluating unmapped water bodies that may still qualify under the provincial rules. If that framework exists, I'd genuinely like to see it. If it doesn't, I think it's reasonable to pause before irreversible work proceeds and make sure the correct provincial framework was identified and applied. This matters beyond this one project. If there's no clear process for considering unmapped qualifying water bodies, then the question is how those features are evaluated in future developments across Nanaimo. Ultimately, this is about making sure the right process was followed before irreversible work begins beside a likely rare peatland ecosystem. If questions about the process remain, they should be answered before the damage becomes permanent.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. No further questions for the delegation. Thank you very much. Oh,
Follow
sorry.
up with staff.
Councillor Manley?
Thank you, and thank you for the delegation. Have you reached out to the developer about your concerns?
I have not yet. My focus has been ensuring that the relevant information is available to decision makers and regulatory bodies. If council thinks it's recommended, I can certainly do that.
No, I'm just curious whether whether you know who the developer is and whether you've reached out to them or not. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions for the delegation? Not seeing any. Councillor Perino, then Councillor Eastmere. Questions for staff? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And a question through you to Mr. Lindsay or whoever Mr. Lindsay feels.
Yes, you may.
Okay. If I could ask our CAO, Mr. Lindsay, obviously we depend upon our staff and the information that we receive when making these applications go ahead. I'm wondering if you could give some clarity to what the issue is here and to what Ms. Brown talked about.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Holm and Mr. Bridges are with me this evening, and I'll pass it over to them to answer the questions. But I would say it's not only staff reviewing, but it's following the provincial process that's set up, which requires qualified environmental professionals to review wetlands that are either on our mapping or not on our mapping. But I'll turn it over to our staff who know far more about this to answer your question.
Thank you. So just looking for clarity on this. I mean, this development and around that area has been going on for many years. So I just wanted clarity on what Ms. Brown talked about and the issues that she presented and the environmental concerns.
Sure.
Please.
Sure, thank you, and through your worship to Councillor Perino. So clarity on everything that was discussed. I mean, there was a lot to unpack there, but main issues with respect to, and I've Kevin Bridges, Mr. Bridges is with me. He's a qualified environmental professional as well, staff, and has worked on developments like this for many decades with the city. So a number of issues were identified. One was the process for identifying non-mapped watercourses. So the city, just a bit of background, the city adopted to implement the riparian area protection regulations, at the time the riparian area regulations. In the early 2000s, the city adopted a meet or beat approach. The city had watercourse protection measures in place for many decades, since the 1990s at least, prior to the riparian area regulations and then the subsequent riparian area protection regulations. That's why you'll see that this water body was identified, the larger wetland was identified in the city's mapping system, and already provided setbacks that would meet or beat the provincial requirement. The smaller wetland was not identified as a wetland that was that the riparian area regulations apply to, and if it would be the QEP, the Qualified Environmental Professional, that would assess the water body to determine whether or not the riparian area regulations apply. And it has to do, Mr. Bridges can explain in more detail, but it has to do with whether or not they're interconnected by surface flow. In this case, the smaller wetland is not. So if you'd like clarity, Mr. Bridges can speak to that. There have been a number of assessments done on the water bodies that we're discussing, and downstream watercourses into Cottle Creek as well. There have been changes over time. I mean, it's a dynamic world as well. Watercourses change. In the case of the larger watercourse, it was actually the larger wetland was not at one point connected by surface flows to Cottle Creek. Changes were introduced. You can imagine Rock City Road went in at some point. There's drainage improvements there. Ocean Pearl Terrace and Barrington Road. There's been development over decades, as you've referenced, Councillor Perino, in the area, that has resulted in some changes in drainage flows, has resulted, my understanding, in the larger wetland now being connected by surface flow to Cottle Creek. The riparian area protection regulations do apply to the larger wetland. They're protected by the city's framework, which includes a development permit area requirement as well as setbacks within the zoning bylaw. The proposed development complies with the city's framework, with the city's requirements. The QEP assessed the developer's qualified environmental professional, assessed the water bodies according with the city's guidelines, and provided the information required to review and approve the development. There is, as mentioned, there's opportunity for independent challenge through the College of Applied Biology to the professionals' information submitted, and I understand that's that process is underway. But from the city's perspective, from staff perspective, the QEP is a registered professional, appropriately qualified, and provided the information required to address the city's guidelines, and it was accepted accordingly. Thank you.
And all of the provincial regulations were taken into account and
Yes, and in fact, Mr. Bridges can speak to this better, but there were references to the develop with care. The province puts out often guidelines, guidance, but there's really not a lot of regulatory teeth at the provincial and federal level. The city has, like I said, since the 90s had a framework in place to protect watercourses, and that's evolved over time. There was fairly significant, I guess the last major upgrade was through city plan. The last major improvement to the city's watercourse protection framework was through city plan. As well, the city has mapped terrestrial and herbaceous environmentally sensitive areas which weren't identified as occurring on this property as well. There are, and should note too, there is, as council's aware, and members of the public maybe as well, as development progresses through various stages, details become clearer, more information's available, designs are refined, tightened up. There's still ongoing work, although a development permit's been approved. There's still work going on. The developer has engaged additional registered professionals, engineers, as well as another qualified environmental professional to review the design, the engineering design related to stormwater management, to review the project to confirm that sediment and erosion control measures are in place, to do additional survey work with respect to, I know there's been some concerns expressed around bird nesting, wildlife trees, those types of things. So there is additional work taking place through the civil design review and the building permit process, and there are additional qualified environmental professionals that are supporting that work with information that's required by staff to review. And as I mentioned, Mr. Bridges as well is a qualified environmental professional.
so we're still hoping for more work to be done. Is that correct, Mr. Bridges? Is that something?
Through your worship, as from the discussions I've had with Mr. Holmes, what he has just mentioned is happening. We have had some discussions with the province around different aspects of this project. We are applying all the provincial legislation that is required to be applied at this stage. There's just some discussion with regards to wrapper and the larger wetland, not so much with the smaller one. Understanding the riparian area protection regulation and when it applies and doesn't apply is sometimes very complicated. Has to do two major things: is fish habitat, or leads to fish habitat by service connection, and the service connection part is very tricky sometimes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrock, then Councillor Manley.
Thanks. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. The first is with regards to the application of the wrapper, I understand what we said earlier that it needs to be applied when there's surface water connection between water bodies to downstream fish habitat. And in the Toth report, it does say that that smaller pond is connected to the larger wetland. And I guess my question is that, yeah, how come wrapper wasn't applied like to that? And then just in the correspondence, I was also surprised looking at our application. I don't know if it's in DPA 1 or what, that we don't require unmapped water bodies to qualify for the wrapper assessment, whereas like the RDN says mapped and unmapped wrappers to apply. And I'm curious about that discrepancy. That's the first time that I had seen that. And then just sort of the discrepancy whether this small wetland is connected or not. Thank you.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Gesselbrick. So I think it's hydraulically connected, but not by surface flow, the small wetland to the large wetland. So Mr. Bridges can expand on that if you'd like. He's visited the property many times and can explain that subtlety. As far as unmapped watercourses, they are reviewed by a qualified environmental professional who would be responsible for determining whether or not the riparian area protection regulations would apply.
Right, so it falls back onto the QEP, the register, professional. So, but yeah, I guess the first one is just the discrepancy between surface flow or not, because it actually says in the QEP's report that it's seasonally connected by surface flow, and so it seemed like a contradiction into the.
Mr. Bridges.
So, through your worship, the Toth report, 2009, I believe 2009 report, state it is connected. It does not say whether it is surface flow or not surface flow, but it is hydraulically connected between the small wetland and the large wetland. However, there is no surface flow channel there to, and where this matters is whether wrapper applies or not, is because if it is not connected by surface flow, then wrapper does not apply. That's the nuances of the regulation. As far as your second part of that, to elaborate on what Mr. Holmes has said, through our development permit area guidelines and DPA 1 in the zoning bylaw, we require environmental assessments for many large projects prior to any development happening. And the purpose for that is to identify biologically significant areas and things that need to be protected. Just like this one was identified way back in 2009 and so on. If they're not already mapped on our system, the qualified environmental professional brings them to our attention, they get mapped on the system, and the environmental professional recommends a appropriate setback to protect that biological asset. And that would then be reviewed by myself and other staff to make sure that it complies with not only our regulations, but also the other regulations that are the federal and provincial regulations.
Right, okay, so the safeguard, what you're saying is basically the QEP then in our process will identify if something's unmapped, and then they will prescribe whatever they think is appropriate for that particular area, regardless of whether it would qualify or not. They make the determination. Do they do a wrapper assessment on it?
They wouldn't do a wrapper assessment on it if the wrapper didn't apply. So that would be the first thing they would do, would be looking at whether the wrapper would be applicable or not.
Okay. And then the follow-up question to that is, yeah, basically like, you know, I've been opposed to this development from the beginning because it looks like a very sensitive area, but since, you know, there's been more, you know, attention to it, there's been, you know, discrepancy around the amount of nesting and birds in the particular area. that has been, you know, raised. There's been questions around, like, you know, we've protected like the border of the wetland, but are we protecting the actual hydrology around it that actually feeds the wetland? And then also raising the correspondence, and that is like around amphibian habitat, like the red-legged frog in that area and the setbacks for that. And I guess a lot rests on this look at the QEP report. And like, say for example, it does get found that there were quite a lot of things that were missed in this third party look at this. Do we have any recourse as we get this new information, like, oh, there were a few things that should have been addressed? Do we have any way to pause the development and say we would like to get a hydrological assessment to look how this wetland is recharged, and if, you know, blasting the rock is going to affect the water into the site? If we do need more bird assessment, is there a way that we can pause and request these type of investigations? Like, even hearing like that the provincial, the province habitat assessment are calling this, you know, a very rare fan. Like, that's the first time that I've heard anything about this. And if somebody had raised that during the rezoning, I think all of council would have been like, oh man, if this is a really rare ecosystem, let's sort of be a little bit more trepidatious around this.
Councillor, there is a question.
Yeah, so the question is, like, given all this information that potentially is new, are we able to pause this and request further investigation before we go ahead and like change it? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll speak to that through your worship to Councillor Gesselbrook. So no, there's not an ability to pause the development. The developer is working through a building permitting process and providing, I think what's important is additional information. The developer is working through the building permitting process and is providing, as I've mentioned earlier, additional information to address some of the concerns that that you've raised or that have been raised, as typically happens through development approvals process. So when it comes to nesting birds and you know, that it's important that, and surveys will take place prior to any clearing happening, and it's important, the time of year is obviously important to that, and the world changes over time, conditions change, so there will be surveys undertaken immediately prior to any tree removal to address regulations around bird nesting, protection of nesting birds, as well as with respect to the hydrology. There are, as I mentioned earlier, additional registered professionals that are working on the application. There are geotechnical engineers, civil engineers. There's another qualified environmental professional that are reviewing the and complying with the city's stormwater, reviewing the proposal to ensure that it complies with the city's manual of engineering standards and specifications, and to address the issues that you've identified and have been raised. As well, much of that information you can see if you look through at the time of rezoning. There are reports put forward by the professionals as suggesting what the issues are and how they might address them, and then those are refined through development permit and then building permit subsequently as they get into the details. So there's ongoing work, ongoing review and design by qualified professionals to address some of the things that you're speaking of. So hopefully that helps. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, Councillor Gesselbrook answered my list of questions, except I'm just curious about RAPPER itself. Are there discrepancies between best practices and regulation? Like what really should happen and what is required under the law?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Manley. That's a double-barreled question in many ways. There are discrepancies between best management practices and what is legislated. For example, I can use a red-listed species classification. Technically has no legislative protection. through the province or through the federal government either. That being said, we do our best to make sure we use best management practices to protect those habitats to where those species may live. There are large challenges around that, and it's always a balance to be found between the protection of the significant ecological site, the developers' rights, the city's wants, there's multitudes of factors that get taken into consideration when we start looking at just trying to apply a straight across setback to something. The other thing that you have to take into consideration as well is topography in a lot of cases when you say, well, we need a 30-meter setback, for example, for an isolated wetland for the red-legged frog. Looking at topography and what forested habitat that frog would actually use in that specific location may not fit with a straight-up 30-meter setback. It might be 100 meters over there and 15 meters over there on the same wetland, based on topography, based on bedrock outcrops, based on a lot of different things. So it's very, very challenging to just apply a straight-up 30-meter best management practice or whatever on a specific biological entity that's always somewhere moving around and fluid. And one big thing about it is one size doesn't fit all in these scenarios. So there's a lot to consider, and hopefully I've answered your question. Best management practice and legislature are two very different things.
Yeah, a lot of gray area. I'm just curious, the province has said that this is potentially or is a S1 red listed ecosystem. Is that an assessment that you'd agree with?
Yes, and I think it was designated that right off the bat. It just wasn't called an S1 designation. That's something that's relatively new. It was identified as a pine bog way back in 2009, which is the classification it was given now. It's just been labeled something different. And it is a very rare ecosystem.
Okay. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, we have a lot of very rare ecosystems in this part of the world, and I think it'd be a shame to see this one destroyed. So I wasn't on council when this decision was made, but it appears that I have no decision point going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We're on to 12, what was formerly C, which is now going to go first, which is Climate Hazard Assessment and Mapping Project. Ms. Bhopal Singh. And then Mr. Lloyd will be presenting.
Good afternoon, Council.
We'll just give it a minute while we let people so we can hear. Mr. Lloyd, sorry to keep you waiting. Folks, if you could just quietly depart, please, so we can carry on with the evening's business. We're not done yet.
Okay.
Ms. Bhopal Singh.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I turn over to Mr. Lloyd, who's our Emergency Program Manager, I'd just like to briefly introduce CHAMP, the Climate Hazard Assessment and Mapping Project. Council may recall that we got a $300,000 grant from UBCM for emergency preparedness. The grant criteria was very specific, requiring us to focus solely on climate-related hazards. This work will help us update the city's Hazard, Risk, and Vulnerability Assessment, also known as an HRVA. It was last done in 2014. And it gives us detailed local mapping for 10 climate-related hazards affecting both Nanaimo and Snuneymuxw lands. It provides a really strong foundation for us to build on, helps us meet the province's Emergency and Disaster Management Act, also known as EDMA, and it confirms what we have been seeing trends of, that we are vulnerable to a number of climate-related hazards, and we see that all of those 10s bar one increasing over time. So the information gathered in this project will be used to support budget investments in planning, education to the community. We were a little disappointed people left because this presentation today is actually a piece of our education component to community. And today we're just asking for Council's direction and recommendation on next steps, which includes a public awareness component, as well as promoting this information and integrating it into our future planning. And before I conclude, I would like to thank our staff and also Snuneymuxw First Nation staff on the government-to-government relationship that really built a good project. This was done in partnership so that we had knowledge sharing from Indigenous elders together with climate data research, and part of working together on research like this helps us as we move forward to build resilience to disasters. So with that, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Lloyd. Thank you.
Mr. Lloyd, good evening. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here. And so just to continue on with Ms. Bhopal Singh's introduction to the Climate Hazard Assessment and Mapping Project. The project goal was to assess and map climate hazards at the local level to support both disaster response and community resilience building. And to meet the project goal, the project team was assigned 3 objectives, which were to identify, assess, and map priority climate hazards. 2, to expand understandings of hazards by integrating Snuneymuxw First Nation perspectives and considering hazard interactions. And 3, to recommend how increased understanding of hazard can support decisions, including at the regional level. So the project rationale, as you can see in the slide in front of you, based on a few parameters, one being that all emergency management programs everywhere are constrained and resource constrained, so we must assign our resources in the most effective way possible. We must also understand risk to do that and accomplish that. The new legislation for emergency management, EDMA is the acronym. We love our acronyms in emergency management. It aligns with the United Nations Sendai framework, and Sendai priority number 1 is to understand risk. So therefore, emergency management and climate readiness, which is the provincial ministry, through UBCM provided funding through CPF, as Ms. Bhopal Singh described, and therefore our climate hazard data, and additionally, climate hazard data is difficult to add to hazard risk and vulnerability assessments. It's very rare to come across. In fact, this is a very groundbreaking project, I would claim, in using detailed scientific data to assess hazards. So here is the hazard risk, or hazard vulnerability and exposure chart to create our equation of risk, and this project really explored the hazard side of this equation, and the grant parameters limited us to our climate-driven hazards. The project study area, there was a regional study area, so that's it was essentially determined to be Nanaimo River watershed. And then the local study area was generally city boundary, as well as incorporating Snuneymuxw reserves 1, 2, 4, I believe. And so the project identified 10 climate hazards: extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme precipitation, riverine flooding, coastal flooding, stormwater flooding, drought, windstorm, wildfire, and mass movement. And the way that these hazards were identified was through initially a screening level process. I'll go to my next slide. On a project example area. So I think in 2018, we experienced a significant windstorm. So here's an example. This windstorm was, I think, felt largely in the city with power outages, but up at our water intake for our water system, Jump Lake, there was a significant log boom that developed. And you can see in the foreground of this picture, a tree snapped off a stump, to give you an idea of how significant the winds were at this event. And this, if you talk to my colleagues in Public Works, was a very significant threat to the city's water source. So going back to how we sort of determined our 10 hazards and how the project was conducted, we conducted a screening analysis. So Input was provided to the project leads, that was Ebwater Consulting, and we helped give feedback to them and allowed them to proceed with deep dives into study hazards. The following characteristics were provided to provide parameters to the hazards assessed. So that included extent, does the hazard occur over a large area or is it localized? Consequence, which is what are the consequences of the hazard in an emergency response context? Occurrence type, so is the hazard an abrupt individual event or does it persist over an extended period of time? The duration, so how long does the hazard last? Is it hours, days, or months? Seasonality, the warning or onset time, how long before a community, how much warning time a community has before hazards impacts are felt, and then likelihood. So how likely is it to occur on an annual basis? This ranking process was guided by the following criteria. Which hazards have the highest estimated risk? Can the hazard consequences lead to a state of local emergency? And is the hazard mappable and does a relevant database exist to support the further study? From there, a mapping approach was undertaken. This was challenging in some respects because these are climate-driven hazards, and therefore a tailored approach for each hazard was developed. That included using the most recent practicable and available data. At a minimum, mapping the extent of the hazard or the components of it across a relatively common boundaries, that is our local study area or regional study area. And then lastly, for each hazard, assess common characteristics for past and future time periods. So here's one example of some of the diagrams that were provided by the project. We asked for various ways in which the data from the project could be presented without, detailed, long, wordy, scientific report style. We wanted the project to be something that we could share with the community and present in a visual way. Here is an example of from the map book of our heat hazard. And one of the outcomes and findings from that is in the local study area, the severity of heat hazard in the near term is projected to increase up to 400%. An example for riverine flooding, I believe this is, within Snuneymuxw Reserves 2 and 4, or 224, they are expected to be inundated by large floods sometime in the near future. And then for wildfires, we were seeing increases along with extreme heat to wildfire risk as well. And then lastly, this diagram is a personal favorite. It shows how hazard seasons will change. It gives us an idea of what months throughout the year, especially as the emergency manager, I like to understand what hazards we're going into each season. And this one gives an example of how hazards might either constrict or expand throughout the course of a year. And understanding concurrent hazards that may occur is another purpose for undertaking the mapping component of this project so that we can overlay impacts as they occur to understand any knock-on or further consequences from one given incident. Here's a diagram provided by the project proponents. The pre-colonial sediment and stable climate is an example in the diagram on the left showing, large events that were happening in the past, but were absorbable, I guess you could say, by the natural ecosystem that was existed at that time. And then now with increased development, you sort of have this constraining of climate-driven hazards where there's obviously more risk because there's more infrastructure and activity in place in the areas where these things are occurring, and intensity is increasing, and there's just more of a constraint on the natural processes that exist. And then some examples here from our engagement and outreach with Snuneymuxw First Nation, including lands tours and meetings with Snuneymuxw First Nation elders to get their perspectives and cultural understanding of climate-driven hazards that have occurred in this landscape over many millennia. And so the deliverables from the project, this is a diagram showing all the various deliverables. We have an overview report, which is a summary of all the hazard findings. We have detailed map books, so high-resolution PDFs mapping where the hazards are assessed to possibly occur in our study area. And then the background report. The background report is a very detailed scientific study. It would be made publicly available as well for people who really want to get into the weeds and the science on how these hazards were assessed, as well as our technical studies that go further for each hazard that was assessed on what the findings were and how they were assessed. The overview report and the map book are really meant to be publicly accessible, And building on the overview report, I've worked with staff to prepare, given council's possible acceptance of the report, a web page, a landing page, where each of the hazards is summarized into this, a 2-page summary for each hazard, how it was assessed, what the findings are, and what the risk rating is. So here's a summary of our recommendations, or these are our recommendations, I should say. Recommendation 1 is to endorse the CHAMP report and direct staff to publish the findings on the city website in an accessible format. Number 2 is to direct staff to use findings, visual images, maps, and other data that are provided in the report to enhance community awareness of hazards and drive preparedness initiatives. 3 is to direct staff to review and consider incorporating data into various cross-departmental program areas such as land use planning, infrastructure, and engineering assessments. And then 4 is to direct staff to include a project to update the HRVA that was mentioned, building on this report, and put that into the city's 10-year project plan to meet our EDMA requirements and to explore grant opportunities to help offset the associated costs of that. Again, this was a grant-funded project through the province, as well as our partnership with Snuneymuxw First Nation. And here's an example of some of the community preparedness content that has already actually been developed and we used for Preparedness Week this past May. Just describing some simple solutions in very visual format for homeowners and community residents on tips and solutions that they can take at their own home that are hopefully feasible for most people. There's a lot of no-cost and low-cost solutions that we like to provide to the community. And I think that's pretty much it. I could go on, but I'll keep it tight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lloyd. That's a pretty impressive presentation. It's a great deal of work, and I'm going to be cheeky here and follow on what Ms. Bopal-Singh suggested. It appears that the citizens of Manawa are more concerned with frogs and ferns than they are with people and property, and let that sarcastic comment echo through the media. Please, Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Your Worship. First, I'd like to move the recommendation.
Second, Councillor Perino, wish to speak to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Just looking at all the durations of the different extreme events and hazards, everyone expands except for, I think, extreme cold. Most notably are extreme heat, drought, wildfire, and I find actually the mayor's comments quite humorous and potentially misdirected, because out of all the things that probably could help us, the community, mitigate these issues are protection of wetlands, protection of humidity on the landscape, flow of water. So that one really got under my skin. However, I think that it is really important that we move forward with this work. I think that yeah, this is really important that we communicate to the public. I think out of all the things that are going to impact the cost of the city, changes to our infrastructure, changes to our planning, really centers around this work right here. And so I really appreciate what's been done by staff, and I really look forward to seeing how it gets integrated into all aspects of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perino, then Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to say, I thought the 2 reports were excellent. Did you, were you able to do those under the $300,000 grant that we got? Was that cover it off?
Yes, this project was entirely paid through that grant, and just to be perfectly clear, that $300,000 was $150,000 for each, the city and Snuneymuxw First Nation. We partnered together.
Perfect.
The
Okay.
city was the project lead on that.
Okay, no, I thought they were both excellent. But the other question I had is, how long do you expect them to be valid for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the timeline given between now and our previous hazard risk and vulnerability assessment is probably an appropriate one, about 10 years.
10 years,
in the project parameters, I did ask for, that was part of the third leg of the parameters, was to seek assessment of hazards in the near future. It's all well and good to ask for a snapshot in time now,
Yes.
but recognizing that question essentially, as well as the fact that we are probably observing some changes in our ecology locally as well.
Yes.
So probably,
Just to make sure we're
probably 5 to 10 years at the very
Okay,
least.
I'll fully support this. I think that these hazard assessments are really good for our community to keep a good watch on what is happening and make sure that we always are prepared, because you never know what's going to happen. So I'm really appreciative. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Eastermere, then Councillor Manley.
Thank you. Thank you for this report. It is really interesting and I think sobering as well to look at the number of climate hazards that we're facing and the issues that we're increasingly seeing. I like the look of the reports. I just wondered, is that something that could potentially come to the the Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusiveness, just to make sure that they're readable and easily accessible for most?
Yeah, I think through the chair to you, Councillor, I think that's an excellent suggestion. Happily would bring that forward to the Accessibility and Inclusion Committee. Yeah, did our best to ask for clarity, to have the report information displayed in diagrams that were accessible to all the community, regardless of as much as we could, reading comprehension levels and things like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think something with like a described audio format could be helpful, but I really like the simple diagrams and, things like wetlands are going to help us deal with so many of these hazards like extreme heat, extreme precipitation, stormwater floods, drought, wildfire, like all of those things are mitigated by the existence of healthy wetlands, and frogs are an indicator species, and when they're not doing well, we're not doing well. So I really appreciate people's focus on looking after our local wetlands and the ecosystems that they support. And thanks for all your work on this.
Please, Councillor Manley.
Thank you, and through you, thank you for the report. Yeah, I'm in support of this going forward and becoming public. So I think there's lots of great information here for people to share, and also to give direction for council and staff on how we work towards continuing to mitigate the impacts of climate change. And just noting that we just passed the anniversary of the heat dome, the largest death of individuals in Canada based on a climate event, and we've seen some massive floods in the Fraser Valley and floods in the Nanaimo River area too. So I think the more we're aware and working towards these goals of protecting local biodiversity and mitigating the impacts, the better off we are. So thank you for the report.
Thank you. I'm going to respond to some of the comments that council has made, as I'm entitled to. We had a room filled with people tonight concerned about a small pond and the creatures that live there. And we have a massive, nearly 200-page document in our agenda tonight that deals with responding to climate change in a way that will protect potentially the lives, property, and future of thousands of our citizens. And my suggestion, with great respect, may not be popular, but I would have hoped that people would have as much interest in this very important report, which will help guide the safety of the citizens of this city for a long time, as they do about a building project. Having said that, all those in favor and any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Lloyd. I know you're not feeling well, and I appreciate you staying to do this. The next is Council Procedure Bylaw Amendments. Ms. Gurry, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and good evening again, Council. So staff is bringing forward amendments to the Council Procedure Bylaw to incorporate changes requested by Council as it relates to the process for responding to delegations and correspondence as well as notice of motions. Part of these amendments, staff is also taking the opportunity, as part of this project, to address an administrative error regarding delegations associated with rezonings where a public hearing is prohibited, and other miscellaneous housekeeping amendments. Details on the proposed amendments are outlined in your report, and I think staff tried to establish a balance between incorporating good governance as well as still allowing council to make their decisions in a timely and effective way. So I think they did a good job in these amendments in striking that balance. And if you have any questions on the amendments as it relates to notices of motions, delegations and correspondence, or the administration correction, I'll just cover that one really quickly. In March 2024, staff brought forward some proposed amendments based on legislative changes around matters that are prohibited from public hearing. And the GPC, Governance and Priorities Committee, made recommendations that were then changed at a council level. And in error, the Governance and Priorities Committee recommendation was incorporated into the amendment bylaw. Though we have been practicing what council's direction was and not what was the committee's recommendations. So there won't be any change in practice, but the bylaw will now correctly outline council's direction from back then. So there's no change in what we're actually doing, just change in the bylaw to reflect council's direction back then at that time. Any other questions, I'd be happy to answer. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Councillor Manley?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just a quick question on delegations not permitted. Currently, when we do have a rezoning application where we're not allowed to have a public hearing, people are allowed to come as delegates. That's going to be able to continue?
Yes, so that is the practice that we have been doing, which was council's direction, but in the bylaw currently it says they're not allowed to come, but we have been practicing council's direction from back then, which was to allow delegations to come prior to the public hearing. Once the public hearing had happened, or once the bylaw is adopted where a public hearing is prohibited, then delegations are not permitted to come.
Similar with when we have a public hearing. Yeah, I think that's really important. I wasn't in favor of the province removing public hearings on residential properties. I think that the public should be heard on matters that affect their community, their neighborhoods, and so I'm fully in favor of people being able to still come and speak to council about what's going on in their neighborhood and whether they approve or disapprove. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Very much, Your Worship. Through you, I'll certainly be supporting these amendments, but I do have a question for Ms. Gurry. I think it's fine to put these down formally in a bylaw, but Ms. Gurry, maybe you could speak and just clarify for me. My understanding was that the chair already has the authority to not accept or rule on whether amendments are appropriate or not, and in fact also has the authority to not accept motions and could require a notice of motion. Is that not the case?
Through the chair to Councillor Thorpe, unfortunately, or fortunately, in the bylaw, even though we have it written down as it is right now, it is a majority of council right now that would be allowing, the way we have the amendments, a majority, 2/3 vote would allow council to have a motion at the meeting. Currently, right now, any member of council could make a motion at any time. It could be ruled out of order or inappropriate if it was against process or procedure, but council does have the ability right now to do so.
Right, thank you, and I understand that, but what you're saying is you're confirming that the chair does have the authority, if he feels it's out of order, to not accept it.
He could rule it out of order. He could
Or
be
she.
challenged. Yeah, he or she could rule it out of order. That could be challenged because procedurally right now, it would have to be like procedurally unallowed or unaccepted should the chair face a challenge on that.
I just recall that happening many years ago on a regular basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. I can assure you this chair would prefer some rules. Ms. Gurry, thank you to you and your staff for this. It's great work. Councillor Eastmere, please.
Move that Council Procedure Bylaw Amendment 2026, number 7272.06, a bylaw to provide clarity on responding to delegations and notices of motion and miscellaneous housekeeping amendments be given first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Eastmere, opposed? Motion carries.
If I could speak to it before I read.
Sorry?
Can I speak to? Okay. So I'll put. Okay.
Yes, put it on the floor first, please.
So I move that Council Procedure Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 2026, number 7272.06 be given second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Please, Councillor Eastmere.
Just so for consistency's sake, I originally voted against the change wherein amendments to a motion could potentially be deemed outside the original intent and scope and would then require a new notice of motion because I felt it's very muddy and open to interpretation to me, and I think it's going to lead to arguments about what constitutes a substantial change and will drag things out unnecessarily. And if there's majority support for a major amendment to a motion, that should be sufficient. I don't think it should take another 2 weeks to a month for it to be debated again. I also voted against the piece around not acting in response to a delegation in the same meeting unless it's to refer the matter to staff for a report to a committee, or unless there's a 2/3 vote in favor. We make major decisions all the time based on a simple majority vote, and so the 2/3 threshold feels unnecessary to me. For consistency's sake, therefore, I'm voting against these housekeeping amendments, but I appreciate staff's work to make the administrative correction regarding delegations and update the items that are listed under the miscellaneous housekeeping amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to thank staff I very much agree with Ms. Gurry that I think staff struck a very balanced and good approach to it, and they captured the intention here very well. So thanks for that. And I very much agree with Councillor Eastmere's comments, but I think I disagree with the conclusion. I do agree that we make some big decisions, but usually we're furnished with staff report and we've had the time to think about them. And I've been guilty of it myself sometimes, where there's a quick motion where it arises from something, and I think most motions would benefit from the time in between, or a staff report, or additional information or conversations before a decision is made. So that's why I think this is probably good practice with respect to good governance. And if there is truly an emergency, something that needs to be acted upon quick, that has arisen from occasion, and council will be able to decide in those moments to pass a motion regardless. So again, just thanks for these, and I do think they'll produce good governance and just slow things down when they need to be slowed down at times. Thank you.
Seeing no further speakers, all those in favor, Councillors Armstrong, Gesselbrock, Mayor Krog, Councillor Thorpe, Perino, Manley, and Brown. Those opposed, Councillor Eastmere, motion carries. Councillor Eastmere.
Move that Council Procedure Bylaw Amendment 2026, number 7272.06 be given third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. All those in favor, Councillors Armstrong, Gesselbrock, Mayor Krog, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Perino, Councillor Manley, Councillor Brown. Those opposed, Councillor Eastmere, motion carries. Thank you. The next is amendments to Parks, Recreation, and Culture Regulation Bylaw. Ms. Gurry, again, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So this amendment bylaw is, again, based on council direction, and it is strictly just to add to Schedule B, as well as some housekeeping amendments, so I shouldn't say strictly, but there is some minor housekeeping amendments that we've made as well, title changes, et cetera. But this is to add 2 parks to Schedule B, where they are now would be prohibited from allowing camping, and that is for Deverell Square Park as well as Nob Hill Park, and that's the extent of this amendment bylaw.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, Councillor Eastmere.
Move that Parks, Recreation, and Culture Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2026, number 7340.01, a bylaw to include Nob Hill Park and Deverell Square Park in Schedule B and incorporate housekeeping amendments, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Manley. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.
Move that Parks, Recreation, and Culture Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2026, number 7340.01, pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. Councillor Thorpe, you wish to speak to it, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Very briefly, I will support this, but as I did earlier, I will express my discomfort to some extent. I feel that this is setting a precedent where other councillors or any councillors could bring forward a list of parks and have them added to this list, which potentially would put us contrary to provincial regulations. So I have some hesitation over this, but I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Eastmere.
I move that it pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. The next is D, allocation of 2026 Active Transportation Funds Phase 2. Ms. Gopal Singh, please.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. This report is seeking your direction on funding to expand the ENN Trail, creating a new recreational section of trail between the ENN corridor going south from Extension Road at McEwen. you look to the bottom corner of the yellow line on the screen for those watching, heading north to Junction Avenue, right at the corner of the site where council has purchased land for the future South End Community Centre. So this proposed project for your consideration builds on the success of the 7th and Hecate Street Rail Trail partnership with Southern Vancouver Island Railway and the Island Corridor Foundation, and would be built to a similar standard. Council approved this funding. This project would include, it would add basically close to another 900 meters of trail, bringing us up to just under 10 kilometers of ENN rail trail. And it would include 2 crossings, and you'll see just north of the parkway on the map as you head along the yellow line, a rail crossing that would allow connection to the Parkway Trail, and then further to the north near Junction Avenue, a double railway crossing that again would connect the Parkway Trail to the ENN Trail. This project has the strong support of our partners at Southern Vancouver Island Railway and the Island Corridor Foundation, and we find ourselves with a window of opportunity for council to consider funding this with implementation should council approve this year. So should you have any questions, our Acting Director of Parks, Recreation, Culture, who headed the last project, is currently away, but I do have Mr. Rose, who's one of our interdepartmental partners on this project, and between him and I, we can answer your questions. Thank you.
Mr. Rose, thank you. Councillor Prino, then Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you to Mr. Rose. So my understanding is that the funding, it's reallocating 189 budgeted for ENN Trail expansion and 361,000 from the 2026 unallocated active transportation budget. Is that right? Okay, I don't for 1 second want you to think that I'm not in favor of this. I think it's a fabulous project and I'd love to see it continue on. What I am concerned about is there are a number of areas that we've been asked for sidewalks and different things. Is this taking from that particular fund that is saying no to others? So we've certainly had a few recently, particularly around schools, I'll say.
Through your worship. So this would be coming from the unallocated pot, although there was a significant bump earlier this year.
Yes.
So, you know, I don't think we're ever going to catch up to the demand, but this is an opportunity that's in front of us that kind of need to strike while the iron's hot, and acknowledge that we do have more money available to address some of those items that will be brought forward.
Okay, and then the only other question that I have, Your Worship, if it's okay, is we're always struggling with time to get these projects done, particularly because things like sidewalks take a lot of time to do. We're going to be able to get this done as of when? I realize it's not a sidewalk, but you know what I'm saying is, can we fit it into the schedule?
Through your worship to council, that is part of bringing this forward to you, because the aim would, should you support it, it would be completed in 2026.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, and through you. This is separate from what Island Corridor is planning as well. I heard that they're planning to do an extension from 7th to maybe Chase River. Is that, do you know about that?
Your worship, through to Councillor Manley, I believe we're talking about the same thing.
Oh, okay.
So this is coming from extension not far from the Chase River Elementary, heading north up towards 7th, but stopping at the Junction Avenue.
Okay, because when I was talking to Mr. Bevan from ICF, he was saying that they were going to continue on from 7th Street, but that's going to be the next leg?
Yes.
And was ICF going to contribute to that leg as well, or?
Through your worship, through to Councillor Manley, we're not sure as yet, but that is a really technical piece. Anybody who's walked that section will know that there's a very beautiful gully that poses some engineering challenges. And so, again, we have had a really positive collaboration with our partners, and so we'll be working with them on that section that is just poses a few more challenges in terms of working out how we do it, how we fund it, how we work together, because it's a very narrow piece of track in that area as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my apologies, I think I kind of heard you a little bit backwards there.
Yeah, similar to the Millstone crossing, it's yeah, problematic. Just another quick question, if I may, and I probably should have brought this up during the previous delegation, but we have a lot of demand for sidewalks in this community, and when we have sidewalks and bike lanes that begin and end, that's because we're asking developers to pay for those pieces, is that correct? And if we were to do that, to do all the sidewalks and, on our own, it would be quite a hit to the taxpayers, would it not?
Through your worship, yeah, those fragmented pieces that were referenced are items that are kind of awkward with development to get done. There are times when we can partner with developers to create more continuity. Wallace Street is an example of what we've done recently to get all the way from Comox down to Fitzwilliam with 2 other partnerships with developers. But yeah, if the city was to bear the full costs, it's quite substantial.
And those small sections are all part of the master plan for the eventual build-up of our system?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gusselbrook.
Is it on the floor, motion? Move the recommendation?
Seconded, Councillor Eastmere. Discussion?
Just,
Councillor Gusselbrook?
yeah, really excited to see the rail trail project continue on, and connecting extension to the future South End Community Center on the rail trail is super awesome, and extension to the rest of the community via the rail trail and the connection to the Parkway Trail. So we're getting a lot of bang from our buck on this project, and I know this is a little section, but hopefully then we'll be able to connect this, what we've done, right through to 7th Street as soon as possible. Thank you.
Councillor Manley.
I would just add the same. I think this is a great project. I'm fully in support and looking forward to some of these other sections getting done so we have a full ENN rail trail from end to end. Yeah, thanks.
Good work, staff. All those in favor? And any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. 13, development reports, covenant amendment application number CA 23-2137 Boundary Avenue. Someone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And any opposed? None. Motion carries. We're on to bylaws. 14A, the first one, zoning amendment bylaw 2024, number 4500.226. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2024, number 4500.266 be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. 14B, zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.243. Councillor Eastmere.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.243 be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. 14C, zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.252. Councillor Eastmere.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2026, number 4500.252 be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. 14D, officer designation and delegation of authority amendment bylaw 2026, number 7353.05.
Move.
Second. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Move that officer designation and delegation of authority bylaw 2026, number 7353.05 be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Manley. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. And 14E, traffic demand management reserve fund bylaw number 7456. Councillor Eastmere.
Move that traffic demand management reserve fund bylaw number 7456 be adopted.
Seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. We have 3 pieces of correspondence. The first is correspondence dated 2026, June 22nd from Mayor James Murdoch, City of Moose Jaw support request, no pause, keep the snowbirds flying campaign. Does anyone wish to make a motion, or just receive it for correspondence? Councillor Armstrong. Seconded Councillor Thorpe. Wish to speak to it?
I just think it's a good thing. It'll bring lots of people here, which will have an economic impact.
Councillor Manley?
I thought the reason why this program was being sidelined is because the jets are beyond their life cycle. And so I'm not, I'm just not sure whether I would be asking the government to extend a program that would put pilots at risk. I think that there's a reason why it's being sidelined.
Why don't we just vote it down then, if that's what you want? It's on the record.
Yeah.
You want to withdraw? Councillor Manley, were you able to withdraw? Seconded. Councillor Manley?
So, and your worship, just on the withdrawal, just because it's on the floor and there's been a little bit of discussion about it, it now belongs to all of you, so you would have to vote it down now, like, unless
So you have to vote it down.
Yeah.
Sorry. All those in favor? And those opposed? Motion is defeated. On to Seacliff Property Sandstone Ltd. Request for a letter of support, Rebuild Community Strong Fund Direct Delivery Stream. Councillor Armstrong? Don't know.
Okay,
There we go.
I actually do want to move this because I did a lot more research, and because they're going to be going through the direct delivery system, which we can't go through unless we are partnered with somebody else. And I'm just on their site now, eligibility and funding. I think it's important that we try and get that project up and running, because anything we do will be under the community stream, because we don't qualify direct stream unless we are in partnership with somebody. And this falls right in line with what they're asking for, because it would be economic development, because this would really help the port expansion to get that infrastructure in place. And I think it's an important thing to really move development forward out in that area. And lights on that highway are extremely dangerous, so if we can get an interchange there built through this funding, I say we do it. And I do know, in speaking with, I did talk to the applicant, and they have worked with SFN on this, and SFN has given verbal support for this as well, because it will also benefit them on their expansion.
Sorry, did we get a seconder, Ms. Gurry?
Oh, sorry, thought it was seconded.
I do not have a secondary.
Is there a seconder? Second, Councillor Perino?
Sorry, I did my spiel. I just think it's really important because, like, when I was at the FCM, they did tell us to apply to all the streams that you can, because they are looked at separately. I know that staff has a different interpretation, but I think it's when you actually read it, it says right there, no projects receiving funding from the local impact stream delivered by Canada's cannot receive funding from the direct delivery stream. However, through the direct delivery stream, you can receive it funding under the community stream, which is what we fall under. We don't fall under the direct delivery. So it's really important that we give them the support, because they fall under direct delivery, which we can't apply to.
Councillor Gesselbrock, then Councillor Perino.
Thanks. Is there a due date by when this has to be in and we have to approve this letter? There is a bit of confusion over whether this is going to compete or not with our application from the city that's already been determined on other items. And because this is coming externally, and it is under debate whether this interchange is actually the biggest priority for interchanges in this area, one, I would like to have clarity on when the due date that we have to approve this letter is. I'd like to have clarity before I approve this letter. If we're not going to miss the due date, I'd like to have clarity on, are these streams competing or not? And is it an issue if we approve something like that? So it'd be difficult for me to support this right now, and I'd be probably looking for a motion to defer this if it's not a timing issue. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong, just hang on a second. Let's hear from Ms. Mercer, please. Or Mr. Lindsay.
Your Worship, I'll start, and then Ms. Mercer can jump in. But I think, first of all, we're still learning about these streams. There's 3 main streams that have been announced under this umbrella program. Under the direct delivery stream, which is the stream under which we're applying, or we want to put in, we've invited to put in for projects. There's 3 sub-streams under the direct delivery stream, as we understand it. So there's regionally significant projects, there's local infrastructure projects, and there's climate adaptation projects is what the materials describe. The proponent in this case, Ms. J. Jordan, I've spoken to her, she is of the opinion when she's talking to the feds that they've indicated that the three substreams do not compete. We have not had that same conversation, so I can't confirm at this point how they relate or whether they compete or how much money is being allocated to each substream. So, but based on, I understand her conversation with the federal government is that they do not compete, but staff can't. Beyond passing along what we've heard, we cannot confirm that without following up.
Councillor, well, I've got Councillor Pino and Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. The struggle that I'm having is, I agree with Councillor Armstrong. However, I want to make sure that we're not going after the same fund that we're looking for our other projects. And as soon as I heard that, because I've been in favor of supporting this, however, if we're going after the same fund for our projects, then I'm not in favor of it, and I'm just not sure how to make the move forward on that. I'm really struggling with that. I'd like to support it. I just don't want to take it from our own projects.
I think you speak for many of us. Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just on the floor now, definitely wouldn't support it. I would happily receive more information. Just even like, what is the ask? How much money? All sorts of things. I think those are fair details to provide to a council before asking for a letter of support. So as happy to defer it and receive more information. Also give the proponent a chance to maybe represent. I understand she couldn't be here and maybe that would have been useful. But as it stands now, I would definitely not support this. Thanks.
Councillor Armstrong?
I just want to say I'm taking this right off of the Canadian government website. The three streams are provincial and territorial, which we don't qualify for. The second one is direct delivery stream, which we don't qualify for, and that's only $6 billion. Well, it says you have to be.
Your Worship, that's sorry, that's
and
not.
then it's the community stream, which says that we do. They're separate.
Sorry, Worship. The direct delivery stream is the stream that we apply for. So there's a provincial federal stream, which has been referred to often as, I believe, the DCC reduction one. It's been cited where there was, I forget the number off the top of my head, but it was $80 million from each or something like that. The direct delivery stream is the stream under which we would be applying for our projects. However, under the direct delivery stream, there are three substreams that we understand there are different opportunities for, and we're just, again, learning more about this, but three substreams that you can apply for. How those substreams compete against each other in the ranking, we do not know that. We've been told that they do not, but we have not had the opportunity to confirm that. We could do that and report back to council if that was council's desire.
If someone wishes to make a motion to defer this to the next meeting so that staff and or Councillor Armstrong can come to some agreement or understanding and that we have enough information.
There's no point because it closes that date. Their application has to be in July 15th.
Well, it won't be the only applications where people make the application, get a letter of support afterwards, or is that a requirement? Can staff answer that?
For Your Worship, in their particular case, they need to have support of the municipality or the province in order for them to submit, because they're a for-profit company.
Move to defer. Is there a seconder? Councillor Thorpe. Discussion on this? Go ahead.
Your Worship, I realize there's a risk with it being July the 15th. However, I generally think these kinds of support come in late on a frequent basis. I'm not suggesting it's the best way, but I think we need a little more information, and I respect what Councillor Brown has said too, that it is, you know, without having some information and without the proponent being here, I think we need to defer and get just a little more.
Councillor Manley?
Thank you. I'm wondering if it's possible to have this discussion on Monday the 13th when we have a GPC. So if there is a possibility of providing a letter of support, we can make a decision on that day.
We would have to have a special council meeting because it would just be a GPC, correct, Ms. Gurry?
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship. So GPC doesn't have the authority to make like that sort of a decision. It would be under consent for council. So yeah, we would have to do it that way.
I think that's a worthwhile proposition, because I'd like more information. I'd like to know for sure that we're not providing a letter of support that competes with our own projects.
I realize voting to defer may kill this unless something dramatic happens, but I'm not prepared to take the risk of offering a letter of support for a project that will potentially be in competition with the projects that we've identified as a city that are important to us, and we've already debated those at some length. The motion is on deferral. All those in favor? Councillor Armstrong, Gesselbrock, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Manley, Councillor Brown, and those opposed to deferral, Councillor Eastmere. That's it. Motion is deferred. Thank you. That was a challenging one. Well, the next I hope won't be as controversial. It's the Royal Canadian Legion Mount Benson Branch 256 request for letter of support, Legion National Cribbage Championship 2028.
That's the one I want to move.
We're sure, Councillor Armstrong. All right, and Councillor Manley seconded. Any need for discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Item 16, there are notices of motion only. Councillor Armstrong will be bringing a notice of motion crosswalk design honoring veterans. Councillor Eastmere, a notice of motion rezoning for data centers. I am not seeing any other business. Question period, Ms. Gurry? Mr. Annesley, 12C, and I'll tell you, Mr. Chapman, we can't take questions on bylaws. Sorry, not in the procedure. Mr. Annesley.
Good evening, Council. Just a couple of really quick questions. Of the 300,000 the UCAPM provided, because Councilor's pre-no question, only 150 was allocated to the city. Was there any city money added to that 150,000 amount?
Ms. Bhopal Singh.
Your Worship, through to the Speaker, no, this was fully funded by the grant monies between the two partner governments. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. And of the 150, how was that allocated?
Through your Worship, I will have to confirm with my staff, but my understanding the money was allocated, pooled from both governments, the 150,000, to pay for the consultants and the work that was done for the project.
Okay.
If you want more details, I'd have to
Nope,
check with my
that's
team.
good.
Thank you.
Last question. Just, was there any breakdown, because I see this is, you're talking about a 10-year plan, was there any breakdown of what the cost structure would be over those 10 years of implementing this? Was there any discussion within those documents that you received?
Ms. Bhopal Singh.
Through your Worship, to Mr. Ansley?
Yeah.
Could I ask for some clarification? Are you asking for the cost of the implications of the results of the study?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. The study looked primarily at what the factors were for the risks presented by the climate, those 10 climate goals. It didn't get into the costs of all the implementation pieces. That would be a next step. If you like, I could double check with my staff about the background studies, but we'll be putting all of that online.
Okay.
And it's one of those tricky ones, forecasting out the next 10 years of how we would mitigate some of those climate impacts. So I'm sorry I don't have the answer for you, but I'll see if it's available. My sense is this is the next step for us to look at.
Okay,
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion for adjournment. Moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Manley. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries.